This time I have a JVC VCR in for repair. This one's an HRA5. This is a standard VHS hi-fi VCR by JVC, but it has a unique feature called SQPB, which stands for Super VHS Quasi Playback. This machine, despite it being a regular VHS machine, has the capability of playing back Super VHS tapes and doing it at almost the quality of a Super VHS. Not quite, but it's close. This time I have a JVC VCR. This one is it's got SQPB, which means it's Super VHS Quasi Playback. This one's a model HRA5U. And this one here is a made in China JVC. So can we still call it a JVC? Because it should not be a CVC, China Video Company. This one here apparently does not turn on. The guy brought me the remote control with it. Says it will not turn on. Now, I've already verified that this remote works. Make sure he's got batteries in it, of course. I've already verified it works because it will control my JVC VCR. If I put it in night shot, we will see that the unit does send out a signal when I press the buttons, and yet the VCR does not respond. In fact, I don't think this VCR is going to do well. It might help if I plug it in. Duh. Okay, I got power. It says auto for auto clock set. Can I turn it on and off from here? And it does indeed turn on, but it does not work from the remote control. And I verified that the remote control does work because it does control my VCR. So the remote control is not working on this one. Let's make sure that this actually plays a tape. Let me grab a VHS. It's got some, oh look, I got an S video. I can play an SVHS video on this unit because it has SQ playback, but maybe we'll try that once I verify that the machine itself actually is working and it's not going to chew my tape up. Good enough. Color bars. So that works. So we have a problem with the remote control. Do any of the buttons work on this remote? No, none of the buttons work. So we have a remote control problem. Probably the receiver inside here is no good. So let's rip it apart and see why it's not working. The big reveal. Oh yeah. Yep. I see. This should come out. This front panel should come off. I have to remove these screws. Take off the front. The front panel will just pop off. And this should reveal the location of the receiver, which is right here. This is the remote receiver. I'm curious as to whether it's just have a broken solder connection on the board or whether the actual receiver is bad itself. I guess I have to remove the entire board on this thing to see it. How does this one come apart? If I pull out a couple of screws on the back here, with any luck, this entire chassis will lift off from the bottom. Looks like there's screws that go through. It looks like there may be 4 screws that hold it in place. Here and 2 more down here. Oh yes, there they are. I gotta push the cassette basket forward to see them. Couple catches on here to pull this forward. Interesting. You got to get the cassette basket forward in order to get to the screws that hold the chassis down. So this is got to be the cheapest of the cheap. This one, holy crap! Like, it's not even a separate mechanism anymore. It's all part of the same chassis. How cheap could they make these things? This is like one piece of the chassis itself is one piece of stamped steel, and then the front loader is just kind of snapped in place, held in place with a plastic clip over here. To get this chassis out, I'll remove these screws. Different size screws too. You know, you can't just do everything all the same size. No, some of them have washers on them, some of them don't. So basically 3 different size screws to hold the chassis down. Alright, now this I think should lift up if I do the cord. I think this should lift up now. I might be wrong. Oops, well, the chassis lifts up. What about the rest of the board? What's holding down the board? I can lift the chassis up at this point. It should unplug. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Okay, there's the chassis. We'll unplug that and unplug the head, this head, and I think everything else unplugs, or does it? There we go. Okay, the chassis lifts out to reveal the main board. There we go. There's that clip, and there's the clips on the side, on the front, and the circuit board lifts out just like that. Okay, now we can inspect the bottom here for this and see if there's any cracked connections, which probably not, but we got to check it anyway. It's probably the little receiving eye is bad. First things first, we'll check the receiver and see if it's got power. So the ground is the same as the shield here, which is the right hand pin. So typically ground, and it'll have a voltage going in and a signal coming back. Should be the outside. The outside should be our pin number 1 on the left, looking from the front, should be the power, I think, but it's going to be one of those two. We'll give the unit itself power, and we'll just look and see whether we've got any power. Okay, this is turned on now. Do we have power here? We have no power, but we have power there. So it's the middle one's actually looks like the one that's got power, because the one on the right is ground, the one in the middle is power, 5 volts, and this one should be the signal out. So we can clip on our scope and see if there's a signal being read out. Interesting, because I hooked up my scope and now I'm getting numbers showing up on the screen here. So it's receiving something. And why am I not seeing it on the scope? I'm not now. I got my digital scope on here. There we go. Now I'm seeing the signal. I'll show you guys the scope. So you can see the receiver is certainly receiving a signal. And now it appears to be working, because when I press buttons, stuff comes up on the screen. So I wonder if it is a bad connection on the board. Notice it's off now, but if I put the power on, I push buttons, you see? I can push 4, 5, 7, 8, 1, 2. The buttons are responding, and they were not responding before. I could not turn it on or off. So, I wonder if it's just a connection. We'll just resolder that board. A connection on the bottom here. Either that or by me connecting the probe made this thing start to work. But we'll just check the connections on the bottom of the board here. Looks like maybe a bad connection problem, because well, I had no signal and then I got signal. So let's just resolder the remote receiver. Alright, I'm going to plug this in and just see if that fixed it, because it certainly started working once I got the board out, but it was not working when I tried it in the cabinet. So I'm just going to pop everything back together and give it a try and see, put the chassis back in, of course. Give it a try and see whether it has done any improvement. At least this one's got plugs that undo, unlike some of the crap that was coming out there from Funai at the end that everything was soldered down to the board. I don't need to put all the screws in just to test it. I should be able to just plug things in and give it power and see if the remote control works. That will at least tell me whether the unit itself is going to be functional. When I power it up, it should reset the mechanism, which it did. Okay, let me just turn it on. It's on now. I've got a display here, and we'll just load a tape. Okay, using the remote control, it's going to thread up automatically. Okay, play. And it doesn't appear to be working again. Yet I was getting a signal coming off of it. Let me just hook the scope back up. Okay, stop. Now it works. I think it's probably the eye. Now it's going to work. It might be something internal on here. Now it works. Now it stopped. Okay, now it's not working. Let's just pull on here and see what happens. Aha! Now it's not working again. Flexing the board doesn't do anything. But if I pull on this, aha! It's probably the remote receiver. It's either got an internal crack where the wires go inside it. Can you see anything on here? Is it broken? Doesn't look like it's broken, but it certainly doesn't want to work. Unless it's now it's working. You see? Now it's working. And it's something to do with this. It's either a crack right where this goes in. Now I might have one of these. I should have remote receivers kicking around here. I think this is probably the same chip, or very close to the same chip that's on here now. If we put up the shield a bit here, it'll probably pop right out, just like that. And I can just cut the wires and attach them. I guess I should shut the machine off before I do it, right? Okay. Well, it's not the same chip, but it functionally it's probably very, very similar. It will fit, I'm sure, in here. Yeah, it'll fit in there, no problem. And I just have to connect the leads. Now, I don't know if the leads are the same, but most of these do use a pinout that is pretty much identical on all of them, because this was an off-the-shelf part, so they didn't make too many different variations of them. Of course, I can't see what I'm doing. I installed the new sensor I grabbed out of an old cable box. This one here, the pinout is different. On the original one, it was signal, power, ground. On this one, it's signal, ground, power. So I had to reverse these two leads right here. We'll see if it works. Okay, so there it is. The tape went in. it will thread. And let's just see whether the remote control that I have in my hand here, when I push the button on the remote, is it going to work. It's playing now because it goes into autoplay. If I push stop, it stops. If I push play, it should play. There we go. Stop. Fast forward. This one might be tuned for a different IR wavelength because I have to be relatively close. If I'm more than a few feet away, it's not working, so I may have to find a different one and try that. But at least we know that it is the IR detector that is bad. Decided on a different module as the other one I put in. Just didn't have the range. I don't know why, but if I got more than a few feet away, it didn't seem to work. So I've tried a different one now. Let's just see what happens on this one when I try to operate the unit from across the garage. Will it turn on? Yes, it does. I'm about 10 feet away now. And as you can see, this one is functional. So this one it will be. This one came out of an old Iowa multi-system machine. The one that I showed off a while back that had broken gears. I had to get the tape out of this one and I put the screws back in. I think that's the one to eject. So we'll throw the screws back in to the unit so that I can reassemble. And I'm not doing anything else on here. I'm not going to clean the mode switch or anything, but it doesn't appear to be bad. And there's very little money in this repair for this. Not going to do any more than I have to on this one. If it's functional, it's functional. It came in for no remote, and that's what we're fixing. So the screws go back in. That was so heavy that the magnet in my screwdriver won't even hold it. I probably should make sure that this thing has a picture before I put it together too much, just to make sure that all the connectors have reseated properly. Actually, just a plug back here. I just have to reach back here and I better undo that first so it doesn't get damaged. I have to reach back here and plug this one in. Which is easier said than done. There we go. Gotta get these two screws in the front. It'll go through its load and then unload mode. I'll put the front cover back on. Hopefully this is going to line up properly with the hole on the front. I tried to mount it about the same height so that the remote will actually see the sensor. It should line up, I think. It should line up. Alright, so will it work? Yes, it works. It works. Excellent. I'll play back a Super VHS tape on this one so you guys can see the quasi playback on a regular VHS machine. They look pretty good actually. So if we remember back to our basics of video recording and how video recording takes place. So your video signal is comprised of two components that make up your composite video signal. You have the brightness information, which is called luminance, and you have the chroma information, which colors the picture. And the chroma is comprised of two components itself. It's comprised of the red minus Y component and the blue minus Y component. Green is derived from subtracting the red and the blue from the luminance, and you're left with the green component when the video is demodulated. But we don't need to worry about demodulation. As far as video recorders go, all they do is they just convert the color down to a lower frequency that can be recorded and recorded on tape. So your chroma and your luminance are separate. They are separated in a comb filter. The chroma goes to the chroma circuits, where it's down converted to, in the case of VHS, 629 kilohertz. In the case of beta and 3/4 inch, it's 688. And in the case of 8mm and high 8, it is 729 kilohertz. The luminance, which is the black and white information, is FM modulated and recorded by the video heads. And we're not talking audio hi-fi, that's completely separate. That's also FM modulated and recorded at a different layer, at a different angle by different heads. But we're only concerned with the video. And the difference between regular VHS and Super VHS, besides the fact that the cassettes are the same size, they actually have a different type of tape in it. This tape is capable of much higher frequencies, and it's identified by the fact that there's a small index hole right here, which tells the VCR that it's a Super VHS tape. The regular VHS tape does not have that hole. And yes, you could drill that hole, and did it many times, and you could actually record Super VHS on a regular tape. Not quite at full quality, but the signal to noise ratio was the shits, but it worked. But because you got a much better tape, you can record higher frequencies, and that is exactly what Super VHS does. Everything else is exactly the same. The chroma is still the same. It does not improve the chroma. It improves the horizontal frequency response because it uses a larger, wider carrier. Instead of it being 1 megahertz wide, it's 1.6. So you get about 60% better resolution than you would off of regular VHS. Somewhere in there. Don't quote me on 60%, but it's around there. You're up from 240 lines to about just under 400 lines. Other than that, Super VHS is very similar to regular VHS. Higher frequencies and some more circuitry to process the signal to try to reduce the color noise a little more than on a regular VHS. They also have an S-video input and output. And what the S-video connector did was it allowed you to record directly from a camera without the chroma ever have been combined with the luminance. So at your camera, your signals are generated red, green, and blue. Doesn't matter whether it's a single chip or a 3-chip or single tube versus 3-tube camera. Your signals will start out as RGB, and they are encoded into an NTSC or PAL signal. That signal is then mixed with the luminance, which is a combination of all the colors put together to form the black and white signal to maintain compatibility with black and white televisions. And normally what happens is the signal is modulated at, in case of NTSC, 3.579545 megahertz and added to the video signal. But what if you keep that chroma information, which is the subcarrier at 3.579545 or 4.43 in the case of PAL? What if you don't mix that together with the luminance? And that is what S-video does. S-video is actually a component format as opposed to a composite format. The chroma information, even though it is modulated into the quadrature modulation, the dual suppressed carrier, double sideband modulated signal, it is not actually
mixed with the luminance signal.
It's at your 3.58 megahertz or 3.579545 to be precise, for those people that have to be precise. And you know who you are. So you transport that chroma separate from the luminance, and this is where the S-video really shines, used in Super VHS High 8, ED Beta, and even the professional Betacam formats would support S-video. The signal is kept separate as it passes through the chroma and the luminance circuits on both record and playback. And as long as it's never mixed together, you don't get the dot crawl and the bleeding colors and so forth that you do with composite video. And this is where SVHS machines differ from regular VHS machines. Even though the signals are kept separate as they're recorded, because the luminance is FM modulated and the chroma is AM double sideband modulated and converted down in frequency, all that remains the same. You convert the signal back up, and on a real SVHS deck with an S-video connector, you would send the luma and the chroma out that S-video connector and off to your television or to your other devices as a component S-video signal. But they also take that chroma and they mix it together and form a composite output that can be fed out your standard yellow RCA connector. But your real advantages to keeping the signals separate have now evaporated when you mix them together. Yes, you can still get much better resolution, close to 400 lines, but you will not get the interference-free color, which is what happens when you mix the signals together and the chroma signals pass over, or just not say the chroma, the luminance frequencies pass into that 3.57545 carrier range. You get beating between the luminance. On broadcast TV, they roll off the resolution at about 340 lines so that you don't get into that area where signals will mix. Now we move into these machines. This has quasi SQ, Super VHS quasi playback, SQPB. That means that this machine can play a Super VHS tape. It has the circuitry to demodulate that 1.6 megahertz of FM bandwidth for the luminance. You put an S-video into a conventional machine and the bandwidth is too high for the demodulator for the luminance, and you end up with a picture that's got all kinds of streaks, all kinds of black and white streaks in it, because you're exceeding the bandwidth of the demodulator. The SQ machines can handle that wider bandwidth, so they can, in theory, decode or recover, demodulate the full 400 lines of resolution that your S-video tape was capable, your SVHS tape was capable of delivering. But it does not have an S-video output. So even though it can play the tape, and it can play the tape with exactly the same resolution as a real Super VHS machine, it lacks some of the noise reduction circuitry that a real Super VHS machine would have, and it only provides you with a composite output. So therefore, the chroma quality will not be quite as sharp, or shouldn't say sharp, not quite as clear, and anytime that the horizontal frequency runs into that frequency range of the chroma carrier, you're going to get the dot crawl and stuff that we're all used to seeing. But other than that, it will play the tape and it will play it fine. So these are great machines to have if you may come across a tape that is in Super VHS. So I'll play my tape here. I have to kill the sound on here just because I know that the sound on this is not something that we're allowed to play, because I use music from Andreas Vollenweider on his electric harp. So let's take a look at the picture quality off of this SQ playback Super VHS tape. So as you can see, the picture quality looks great. Let me just fast forward a bit here. We'll get into some more color. This was shot on a PVS 350 Panasonic Super VHS camera. And this would be all in-camera editing. So this was shot on the camera, and this is a second generation copy, however, because it does have hi-fi sound. So I played the original tape off the camera using the S-video out and made a copy of it, and this is that. And those stupid effects are in-camera effects off the PVS 350 Panasonic Super VHS full-size camera that I had back in the mid-80s when they first came out with them. But quality-wise, as you can see, it's excellent. It's nice and sharp. It's probably almost as sharp playing it on this machine with SQ playback as it would be on a real Super VHS machine. The only real difference that you would see is if there was fine detail. Think a referee's striped jersey. When they get to be a specific size on the screen, you'll get the color bleeding on them. That is what the S-video connector eliminated. But it only worked if the source was a component or S-video source. See, the chroma on here is no better. You see the bleeding and the reds and the oranges and stuff. Chroma is no better on Super VHS than it was on regular VHS. It still looks like crap. There's only about 30 lines of chroma resolution on VHS and Super VHS. Beta was a little bit better. I think they had like 40 lines of chroma resolution. Same with Super Beta and ED Beta. High 8 had a little bit more, I think it was 45 lines. 45 in that range, I'm guessing, but it's in there. And this all has to do with the frequency. 629 kilohertz for VHS, 688 for Beta, and 3/4 inch So 3/4 inch had the same, around 40 lines of color, and 8mm had 45, 48, somewhere in there. A little bit better in the chroma department. But if you're talking Betacam SP, it had 120 lines of chroma for each the red and the blue. So we're talking like 3 times the color from Betamax, and 4 times the chroma bandwidth from VHS on Betacam, because Betacam was a full component system that did not use heterodyne or down converted color. It recorded it directly with a separate pair of heads. Anyway, this machine, as you can see, is oh, look at that, it's going into auto picture. I guess it's trying to sharpen it up. But say this machine's working, and I'm going to go to the other side of the shop and just make sure that the remote control works from way back here. Oh look, it works. On the other side of the shop. There's forward and reverse. We'll make sure that the music is playing. Can't play it for more than a few seconds, but and that's about all I can play. Anyway, this one's done. Rewind the tape and then get this one ready to send back. This was a local one that was brought to me. And to say a month or so ago, the guy brought me the remote. He thought the remote was dead. So I took the remote. I don't think I did a video on the remote, because I just kind of took it into my closet where I have a real SVHS ET, I think it was. That was JVC's last version of Super VHS. Was they came out with the ET Super VHS machines. Now ET stood for Extended Technology, and basically what they did was they did what we were all doing with Super VHS machines before the ET machine came out. Everybody was taking their tape and they were drilling a hole, index hole, to fool the machine into thinking it was the Super VHS tape and getting quality that was actually quite close to what Super VHS looked like. Looking to see if there's an eject button on this. I don't think there is on the remote, so I gotta press the button here. JVC developed the machine that you could record Super VHS on a regular tape. You could put an SVHS tape in and get the best possible quality, but you could also put in a regular tape and it would record at better quality. It wasn't full SVHS quality, but it was better than regular VHS by quite a bit on a regular tape. I forget, maybe someone can correct me, whether the tapes recorded in ET played back on a regular machine. I think they did, because it didn't use the full 1.6 megahertz of bandwidth. It dumbed it down a bit to, I think it was 1.3 or 1.4. So it was fairly compatible. The tapes, if I'm not mistaken, if you recorded a regular VHS tape in VHS ET mode, it would look better if you played it back on the VHS ET machine, because it could recover all the bandwidth. But if I'm not mistaken, and somebody can correct me here, because I've never tried it, although I probably should, because I do have some machines I could do this demo with. But if I'm not mistaken, if you played it back on a regular VHS machine, it would play, but it wouldn't play as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I could very well be, because I've never tried it, but the picture quality was slightly compromised if you played it on a regular machine. It would play, but it would play like at 90% instead of 100% of the quality that it could. And that was the compromise. If you turned that ET function on, you could get better quality for tapes that you were going to play back on that machine. But if you played them on another machine, they would play, but they wouldn't play as well. So you hit the button on the front to turn it off. If you were planning on making a recording that was going to go on a regular machine, you turned it off. But you could turn it on and get the advantage, most of the benefits of an SVHS tape, but without having to spend the money to buy SVHS tapes, because we all know that they were expensive. Speaking of that, I got some brand new ones here that have never been opened that were given to me. So maybe someday we will try this out and play around with an SVHS machine and make some recordings. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.